Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry, and with me as always is...
Do not run. Eddie of Edward is Truth.
And today we're talking about Saw 2, released October 28th, 2005.
Wow. The expression on your face. Go to video if you haven't already, folks, and just look at Zack's.
Well,
very
okay,
beleaguered.
so we covered Saw 1, or just Saw, last October. So we knew that we were eventually gonna make our rounds through the movie franchise, and I don't know how like quickly we're gonna be doing that because we're in no rush. There was supposed to Saw 11 or Saw XI. People get really triggered when you call the movies by pronounce the letters with the Roman numerals.
Soxy.
Soxy. Well, no, because I did this Friday the 13th ranking video on the YouTube channel way back, like 2020. And just for fun, I pronounced every movie like phonetically as it like the letters are just like part XIII. And people got really triggered by that. So anyway, fun note. So we're covering Saw II today.
That's crazy. Yeah. Saw II. Take that.
But so Saw 11. Or whatever they were going to call it, was supposed to be released. I think it was going to be released at the end of September, so it would have already been out at this point. But they, I don't know if it was like, because I don't follow the news really. I guess there was maybe they weren't happy with the script or something. They wanted to give it more time and develop it a little bit longer. Because it seems like now with the advent of Saw X, they were wanting to start like a whole new yearly thing, because that's what the movies did initially. Like it started in 2004, and every year there was a new Saw movie.
For better or worse,
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, for me, what I've kind of come to realize, especially like after the podcast that we did for the first movie, is that I don't really love the Saw movies. Like I think that this is more your wheelhouse. Because I think that like each movie on its own is really it doesn't add up to the sum of all of its parts. Like it's good as like kind of like an overarching story, but each movie on its own, it's just kind of like, so what? Like there's nothing that special about them. There's one that I really like, but other than that, I feel like it's mostly like you have to watch them all. You can't just like be like, yeah, you know what? I feel like I want to watch Saw 2 today. You know, like that doesn't work. It doesn't work for me.
Well, it doesn't for me either typically, which is ironic considering the fact that I did not watch the first movie for this particular screening. I just watched Saw 2, Saw Roman numeral 11. And and I had never done that before. Even the first time I saw the movie, I remember it was a rental. I saw it with, I don't remember if we were still together or if we were just friends at that point, but my first boyfriend, who then became a best friend. And I remember we didn't want to just dive into the second movie, so we rewatched the first one and then watched the second one on the heels of that and became very depressed. And I've only ever seen it in that context. Seeing it on its own actually helped me a lot in this particular screening. Because I wasn't comparing it with the first one, which I really respond to in a positive way. So it always felt kind of like a letdown. Even the things that worked didn't feel like they were going as full throttle as they could. So this particular time, just watching it isolated, I noticed some things I didn't notice before. It was kind of the easiest sit I've had with this particular flick, and I just want to put that out there.
Easy in a good way.
Yeah. Easy in a way that like I was like, oh, okay, I think there were a lot of things I could see what they were going for, but I felt they didn't work. And now I'm starting to go like, oh, I'm recognizing a parallel here. I'm recognizing maybe this is what you were trying to do, to varying degrees of effectiveness. And we'll talk about that.
Yeah, well, I'm interested in hearing you bring up those specific things. Where, for anyone who hasn't seen Saw 2, which I mean, like, why are you watching this? Come on. But for anyone who hasn't seen it, where, like, you know, how can they?
Well, there are physical media releases up the wazoo. Like, you can't throw a stone without hitting a copy of Saw 2 on Blu-ray or DVD or, well, 4K is a little bit of a different thing. But the most recent single edition of Saw 2 is from July 2021, includes the unrated Blu-ray plus digital code, or you get the most recent collection from March of this particular year. It has all 10 flicks available in Blu-ray, Blu-ray 3D, DVD, and digital copy, loaded with extras. But the epitomal one is called the Ultimate 4K Edition from Australia. Now, should be noted, it was released in November 2022, so it is only the first 9 movies, does not include Socks. But because it's from Australia, the 4Ks are region-free, but the Blu-rays are not. So you would need a region-free Blu-ray player in order to watch those. So there's that, and on the subscription-based...
4K, though?
4K.
Yeah. Apparently all 4K players are region-free.
Oh, are they? See, yeah. I don't have one, so I wouldn't know from that.
Oh my gosh, get on it! Like, get a 4K TV.
Well,
get your.
Once there are more uniform 4K releases that are getting like 4 and 5 star video and audio, you know, reviews, yeah. I'll consider it. You know me, I wait until forever. It took me forever to get my Blu-ray player.
I don't think that Saw 2 is a movie that needs to be seen in 4K. I don't think any of the Saw movies need to be seen in 4K.
I mean, I don't know how much of a difference it makes. I mean, I liked I watched mine on the Blu-ray, and I have the old collection of just like the first 9 movies. I still have to buy Socks, but on subscription-based platforms, it's available to stream via Max and Peacock at this time of this recording, or for individual rental on Prime or YouTube, as per usual. Yeah. So that's where you can find it.
Yeah. Exciting stuff.
Wow.
I know.
The cracks in the plaster. Yes, go for it.
Yeah. So just before we get into the nitty-gritty of everything, I just wanted to kind of give you guys sort of an update about what's going to happen the next couple of months for the Cherry Picker. So as many of you know, I am going to be shooting a movie that I've written and directed called Macabre.
Yay!
Macabre, and we're going to be filming that in November. We're in pre-production right now. So I'm going to have to be going out to Toronto for like over a month in October here. And I'm just going to be kind of stationed there and then traveling back and forth between there and Connecticut. So we're going to, there's going to be a different background behind me, I guess, yes. for those of you who are viewing, but we're going to try really hard to make sure that we're efficient with everything and planning it out, because I'm going to be juggling the production of this movie with the podcast and all that stuff. So that's going to be happening. For the Cherry Picker After Dark this month, we are going to be doing a Halloween franchise, Rotten Tomatoes, Letterboxd, IMDb, whatever. We're essentially going to be doing a deep dive into the different opinions out there, just like the critical opinions of the franchise, and kind of weighing them against the audience opinions and of course our opinions. So that's going to be a fun time. For those of you who are new to the podcast, the Cherry Picker After Dark is the bonus Patreon exclusive episode that we do every month. So if you want to check that out, you can head over to my Patreon site. So www.patreon.com/ZackCherry. I'll put the links in whatever you're watching or listening on. And if you are subscribed to the Freddy Krueger chair, you'll have access to that, as well as access to all of our previous Cherry Picker After Dark library. There's like 30 episodes now. So hours and hours and hours of just footage or audio of the two of us yakking at each other. But also, if you're supporting my Patreon on any tier, you will get early access to all of our episodes as well. So that's an incentive to help us out. We really appreciate everyone who contributes, and it goes a long way in making the podcast what it is right now, or even better if we can make it better. I think that we're pretty perfect right now, don't you think?
I mean, I listened to. I know it's a rhetorical question, but I did listen back to our last episode proper, Dream Master, and I listened to myself talk because I was getting feedback from it. A lot of people were like, "What?" I walked away going like, we were both tired, and I think we even admitted we are so tired. Like by the end of it, and our brains felt kind of fried. And then I got feedback from people who were listening to it saying like, "That's like one of the best. I had the best time listening to it." I'm like, really? I didn't. Oh, I was so worried that people were going to be disappointed. I didn't feel like I showed up, so I went back and I listened to it. And within like the first 3 minutes, I meant to say ADR and I said DVR. And I don't know if you caught it and didn't say anything, or if you, because later on you talked about ADR and you said you mentioned ADR earlier, and I was like, oh, he didn't. He meant, I was like, I mentioned DVR, but I meant ADR.
Yeah, I think that you and I are
drove me nuts.
We're kind of like, pick up on each other's idiosyncrasies at this point. That like, I know what you're talking about, and you know what I'm talking about. Like you, and you as a Virgo, like every time I mess up, I think it's actually just an Earth sign thing, because my mom, a Capricorn, will do this to me all the time, and she's just like, "Don't you mean like this word?" And I'm like, "No."
I mean, I get that
the
from some Scorpios too. It depends on the correction itself. I think it's all about how important the correction feels to be made, like in that particular moment. But I was just gonna like, either he let that go, or or we're both just so tired he didn't notice. So I don't feel perfect, but I was happy that people. It wasn't like a deal breaker for people hearing me use the wrong phraseology.
I think that's so neat that you listen back to the episodes, because I don't.
Every now and then. I don't always do it.
I just, we just record it and we put it out there. And I'm like, I mean, we've been doing this so long now, like for years, that I don't even think, I just feel like we're getting worse and worse, like internally. Like that's just like, it's just like we're phoning it in. So I'm just sort of like, I don't want to hear it back, because I just know that like I'm gonna be like, oh shit, or really like self-conscious about something. But like Eric, who's my co-director on Macabre, he listens, and he's guested on this before, but he's actually said to me just like, you guys have gotten so much better. Wow. And I'm just like, what do you like? How? And he's just like, well, just like it's always been like a good rapport, but just like. The more we kind of go on, the more I guess at ease we are with one another, and just like the way that we're able to kind of move things along and just sort of like bounce opinions and criticisms and ideas off of each other. Just like I guess we're good. So yeah, I mean, if you want to support on Patreon and help us, maintain this level of quality, or get even higher, you can do that. And I do want to say thank you to some of my top tier Patreon supporters. So for all of the Michael Myers tiers, thank you to Kyle Beard, Sam Levy, Ellie Hamouche, Shane Allingham, Tim McKay, Stephanie Starbright, Horror Slut 95, Bruce the Genetic Jackhammer Rando, Josh Carr, Gemma Lou, Michael Boswell, Brandy Beebe, and then Ghostface supporters, Eric Champney, Daniel Saturn, Baby Ghoul, and Garrison Nichols. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for being part of this. And a lot of those people were also supporters of Macabre. So doubly thank you. Anyway, Edward, do you want to hit us with a Saw 2 premise?
I don't want to, but I will. Yeah. All right. I won't do it with vocal fry, though, because I have to sound like Billy
Amanda
or Jigsaw or do it like Amanda. What is it? Amanda's for. I don't know it well enough to do. I'll wait until. Well, I'll do Amanda
normal,
in 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, normal basically is Jigsaw, Billy, not the. But the.
Yeah.
Let's play a game. So I'll just do this. Sure. All right. When an army of police officers and a SWAT team raid Jigsaw's lair after his latest game, Detective Eric Matthews soon learns that in an undisclosed location, another one of Jigsaw's games is being played by 8 abducted people, one of whom is Matthew's own son, Daniel. Now, Matthews must surrender as the latest pawn on John Kramer's notorious chessboard if he doesn't want his own son added to the roster of numerous other casualties to perish by the saw too.
Perish by the saw too.
T-O-O?
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you. I knew you'd like that stuff.
The first thing I noticed about this movie, because obviously being like a huge Scream aficionado, is the fact that Matthew's son is your favorite and Scream 4 Cherry Picker nominee. Robbie Mercer was the character's name, played by Eric Knudsen. Is it Knudsen?
Yes, Scriphorum. Yeah. My impulse says Knudsen, but it's probably Knudsen.
Like Knudsen?
Knudsen.
Yeah. She's going to be over here canoodling in the corner with these 7 strangers, trying to find our way out. Okay, so here's a question. So I do have questions about logistics and stuff here. So were they were all kind of like poisoned beforehand, or is there like nerve gas in the building, in the house that was infecting them? Like, what's the... Because I wasn't following closely enough, apparently.
Okay, so I definitely enjoyed it more than you this time. But the nearest I could gather was that the poisoning was happening purely via gas leak, if you will, into the premises that they were all locked into. And that the more exposure to the gas, the more likelihood of them dying. So, and the door was going to open in 3 hours, but the gas would have killed them within 2. So they had to move fast and they had to cooperate, which one very key figure was not willing to do.
So, okay. So then in that case, because we never see Amanda and we never see Eric, I can't remember his name.
It's Daniel.
I
said it in the premise.
We never see Amanda, and we never see Daniel like cough up blood. They don't appear to be suffering any symptoms of this at all. So
some are more susceptible than others. I just thought that was body chemistry and weight and things like that. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, no, because I don't think that Jigsaw would have. Spoiler alert. This is why you watch the movie first. Amanda is, kind of like the plant. Like she's behind it all, helping him. So I just can't see a scenario where she would be put in this thing. Like the takeaway that I had is that whatever injections that they were trying to retrieve, both Amanda and Daniel had already been given that before they woke up.
That's interesting because, they certainly seemed at least less susceptible than like a bunch of the other people while they're all wandering around like zombies, basically, towards, the climax, at least their version of the climax, what they, with their dying breaths, a lot of them. But, I don't know. I mean, the fact that Laura went so much sooner than everybody else, that's one of the things that made me attribute it to body chemistry. Maybe there was, like, a trace of it to, like... to the blonde girl, who I
attribute that to her just, like, being very weak-willed. Like, it just, like, she just let it happen.
But I didn't... Oh, okay, we'll get to her in a second. But what I also thought was just... I mean, obviously, like... She cut her arms, like to really truly sell like the fact that she had gone back to like a self-destructive nature, and that's why Jigsaw or Johnny Jigsaw put her back into this framework and everything like that. And also like she was absolutely susceptible, like she was thrown into an actual pit of actual needles, like that wasn't I don't know
that was not planned though. That was
no, it wasn't planned, but I mean she knew the risks, and I feel like I don't know, there's a part of me that likes to believe that Amanda kind of like would want some susceptibility. Like
Yeah.
maybe give me like a drop of the antidote, but don't give me the whole thing. And I got to keep the kids safe. That's my mission. But also, I don't know. I just feel like she's sick enough that like the adrenaline rush of like actually having to protect him from a threat, from an actual, I don't know. There's something about that. I think she needs that.
Yeah. I mean, your headcanon sometimes confuses me, but like what I... No. Because like what I ascertained from everything is that I don't even know if she was ever like all of her games as they were kind of like she was a willing participant. So the one that we see in the first movie where she's got the reverse bear trap. The way that it's sort of retconned in 2 is to show that like he's like, you have to be tested. So she knew what she was getting into when she was actually in that scenario that we see in the first movie. Because like the story as it seemed, the way that she was describing it is that like she met him beforehand and she was suicidal and he, wanted to reform her and then recruit her to be part of his cult or whatever. And then it was kind of like at that point it was like, now I'm gonna carry on his work after he dies. So this like everything that was happening in the house was actually her plan, because she had the vendetta against Donnie Wahlberg. So it's like that's why she kind of targeted him. And the reason why I think that like the son Daniel would have been safe the whole time is because the ultimate game there was like, he's safe. He's in this literal safe. All you have to do is just sit here and wait for that safe to open, and he will reveal himself. So they couldn't jeopardize either Amanda or Daniel getting, like coming into harm in that house scenario, because for like, the long game of it all, for what was Detective Donnie Wahlberg being tested. I don't know anyone's name. I'm gonna call people
Detective
Lucy,
Matthews.
Lucy from Seventh Heaven, Donnie Wahlberg.
And I'm not gonna know who you're talking about, but okay. But Detective Eric Matthews is the character Donnie Wahlberg plays. So,
Awesome. See, that's confusing because then we have Eric playing his son, Daniel. See, it's just...
Well, if you just call them by their character names...
I don't know, because the characters in this movie are just so... They're yeah.
I agree with you to a point. This is part of like the epiphany, and I guess now is as good a time to say it as any. But before I do dive into that, one thing I wanted to address just in terms of what you just said. Okay, I got the whole test and everything like that in terms of like, this is her test and everything like that. I didn't get the impression that like before, and maybe it's something I'm forgetting from a reveal in Saw 3. Like I only watched this movie, and I don't watch these movies often enough to have the lore locked in my head the way I do like with A Nightmare on Elm Street or a Psycho or even a Texas Chainsaw. I always got the impression that like the first trap was her trap, but because it worked, because she saw the vision, she found Jigsaw, or Johnny Jigsaw, and decided to become one of his disciples, as it were, and help him in his work. And in order to do that, she needed to prove herself, and that's what all of like the self-laceration and stuff was about, to sell like this thing, to be committed, to help to aid in, once they were acquired, putting them in the places that they needed to be, and then throwing herself into the mix and putting herself at risk, because anything could happen. She's gonna have to sell it, and gonna have to be like, that's why I also think like she must have been on at least a little bit of it, and he must have too, Daniel, because if Daniel felt nothing, absolutely nothing, I feel like there would have been a question of, why aren't I feeling anything? Everybody else is like bleeding from the nose and fatigued and stuff. Why aren't I experiencing any of that?
Well, it's like the placebo effect, It's just like you tell them that they've got it, and they're watching everyone else around suffer from this.
I don't know if that's the way of John Kramer, though. Like maybe he has some medical knowledge.
We've talked about the way of John Kramer, because the way of John Kramer is bullshit. Like, here's the thing. Like, and I wasn't really like keeping track of like who was succumbing to the earlier on traps and getting murdered. Like earlier on when like the SWAT team goes in, so I wasn't sure if any of those people died, but there's the one guy gets his legs crushed in
Yes.
the thing, and then like doesn't like some sort of explosion or something goes off. There's like some sort of like shock. So I don't know if any of those people were dead, but then
or merely incapacitated.
Yeah,
but they were hurt. They were certainly hurt.
with like possible life-threatening things, or at least injuries that would greatly affect them for the rest of their lives for merely doing their job that they've been their government job, whatever job that they've been paid for. Like, Jigsaw doesn't know anything about each one of these SWAT team members and what their lives are. Anyway, that aside, he's still, has this argument of just like, I don't actually kill people. I test them, and it's just like, what? I beg to differ, because there's so many holes in his ideologies. It just like, it's frustrating. It's frustrating to watch. And I don't think that it's the character. I don't think it's the character doesn't realize this. I think it's the writing, personally. But it gets to a point where it's just like, okay, come on, dude. Like, just own it.
Look at what you're asking him to own, but also the fact that it's not purely his game, it's his passing of the baton to Amanda, and the fact that like she may have control of a lot of things that I believe he's overlooking, but that doesn't mean that he's going to have access to every single detail. So I wonder if some of this, because she's a little bit more reckless than he is, and a little bit more, shall we say, revenge prone, which we get examples of later outside of this movie, where passion kind of seizes her, and she just kind of sees things as like punishable or not, and usually they're punishable. But that's the other thing about this movie that actually was a huge problem for me for a long time, for basically like my entire life with this movie, for like about 20 years, is that like I felt like with this movie, ultimately gone is that morality tale that I got from the first movie, which was the thing that made me scared of people in my closet like abducting me because I'm not living my life to the fullest, so I'd better live my fucking life to the fullest, or else somebody could abduct me, put me in a trap, and make me appreciate it for once. That's not at all put into play in this particular instance. This feels much more, especially with the people who are put in there, because you bring up an interesting point. I was thinking about this while I was showering before we recorded. I was literally thinking, okay, those people, the guise of their incarceration, if you will, or like in the game, within the framework of the game, is that they've all done wrong things, and they've all destroyed themselves or destroyed other people, or committed to the destruction of other people and their lives and their addictions and whatever. But it feels like that's all just to kind of like present a lesson ultimately to Detective Eric Matthews, whom they all got screwed over by him, but that doesn't make them sympathetic in John Kramer's eyes or in Amanda's eyes. It actually makes them all like kind of susceptible and all corruptible, so they all deserve to be challenged and punished and to burn, basically, even at the hands of each other. Like, you could suffer through no fault of your own because someone else decides you need to suffer, you need to perish. And so all of that is incredibly fucked up, and I don't know if that's John Kramer, I don't know if that's Amanda, I don't know if it's both of them, but I think the major theme that I feel was really pushed to the forefront in this movie, that I think was alluded to, it was used in the first movie, but because we've abandoned this morality tale, now it's kind of gone the way of internal corruption of like a system, like systemic corruption, which will be an ultimate theme as we progress from here on out, really got brought to the forefront, because once we get the reveal about what Detective Matthews is actually doing, the fact that he dropped evidence, and basically what's the word I'm looking for, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but basically, like, painted a picture that got all of these people put away and paying a price that they did not deserve to, because they committed their crimes, but they did not commit the crimes that he was accusing them of.
Yeah.
All of that, I don't. It's kind of interesting. I don't know. I miss the feeling of before.
Yeah, the thing is that like everyone is such a one-note character. like especially Detective Matthews, that like I don't like we've talked about this before. It's just like I don't care if like our protagonist or our main character is sympathetic or not. Like I don't need to like them. I just need to understand them and be entertained by them. And I was neither of those things with really any of the characters in this movie. So I'm just like kind of going along, just watching all these people, and it's just like, just. I mean, the way that I kind of, you know, before I even ever saw a Saw movie, and this was actually the first one I had seen. More on that in a second. My understanding was that it was just sort of like, it's just a body count, you know, movie. It's more like, you know, it may as well be Friday the 13th of just like, let's just find really creative and inventive and disgusting ways of killing people off. And that was sort of like the way that I had come into it, because the Saw 2004 had come and gone, and it was this huge hit, and everyone was talking about it. And then Saw 2 came out, and I think the tagline was "There will be blood."
Yeah, I think
something like that. Yeah, and I asked I asked a coworker about that who had seen it, and she's just like, well, like yeah, the complaint with the first one is that there's not really a lot of gore in it. It's just sort of, it's more just suggested. So this one, they really kind of, you know, up the ante, which I mean, I didn't really feel that all that much. I mean, like, you know, probably more so in 3. You know, they raised the bar, but regardless of that, my interest was piqued, and I remember going to not Blockbuster, but Rogers Video, which was, you know, kind of like a Canadian. We had both, but it was like a Canadian video outlet, video store, and I went with the intention of getting the original Saw, but they were out of copies. They just had Saw 2. And I remember this distinct conversation that I had with the guy who worked there, because I said, do I need to see Saw 1 before I see Saw 2? And he's just like, no, not really. There's nothing connective about it or whatever. And I'm just like, okay. And I watched it, and completely fucking, like, I had no idea what was going on in this movie other than like what is presented up front. So it's like, that guy lied to me. Like, if there's any franchise where, yes, you have to watch the first movie, like you could watch Friday the 13th Part 2 without having seen Part 1, especially since most of it is sort of like shown at the beginning. You could even watch Halloween 2 without having watched Halloween 1, because it's just like, it's like, this is what just happened, you know, it's like this. But this, where there's so many like intricate flashbacks and like interwoven pieces that like some are taking place, you know, months before, some are taking place months after. It's like, it's confusing. So I was a little salty about that, but I mean, I eventually, you know, watched them in order. And I still have no idea. Like, it's so confusing still at this point. Like, like I would need to go watch CZ's World videos because he loves this franchise, and he's like probably like 100 videos on it, like explaining it. So if I ever need an education, or if anyone needs an education, I would check that out. But
100%.
Like, I'll watch them and I'll be like, okay, I can follow along. But as soon as it's finished, like as soon as you get to like the Saw 3D or whatever the final chapter is, I immediately forget everything. So every time I watch these movies, like I feel like I'm not necessarily watching them for the first time, but it's like I always like I'm like, oh, okay, that I remember that. Whereas like if I watch Friday the 13th or Scream or anything like that, it's like, okay, and now this is gonna happen next, because like all of that I have committed to memory. Whereas like every single one of these movies just mostly feels the same to me.
There's much more chronology involved with other slasher or horror franchises. With this one in particular, you're right, it's all kind of like wired throughout, and then you find out even more about like, well, you thought you knew what was going on, and then but now reveal the curtain, and but I will say from the beginning, I feel like the opening is memorable. Like I do remember that X-ray with Michael with, you know, the key behind his eye and everything like that. Like it's and the fact that he doesn't make it, and I'm just kind of like, I was still, in this particular screening in particular, I was still kind of on board. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this kill, and this is actually really well staged, I feel, and well shot. And then we get into the Donnie Wahlberg of it all with Detective Matthews and his son, and he's obviously like not having a great day as a parent, and maybe not having a great parenthood. I don't know what is the state of parenting? Great state of parenting, but because just like when Daniel's sitting there speaking to him very calmly, obviously there's no communication happening. He says, "I think I should just go back to mom's." He's just like, "Well, then go!" In his face. I'm like, fuck you, fucker. That is no way to talk to your son.
He did this thing where he's just like, he asked him a question, which I find so frustrating in real life, by the way, where you're just like, someone's just like, well, what was that? And then you start to explain it and they cut you off.
Yeah.
And I just like, then go.
But also,
he's like, I think I should just go back to mom. And where was he? Was he like walking to their car, or was he going to his own car? Like, that was confusing to me. I didn't. It was like the Nightmare on Elm Street 4. Where does Kristen going? After on delay.
Yeah.
We needed to see Detective Matthews' ex-wife just there, just like, Daniel on delay.
I just got caught up in the like Law and Order tracking shot of it all, but
oh god!
But the thing is,
it
like,
was very there is a very procedural quality
100%.
to these
Yeah.
that it's not it sucks the fun out of it for me.
Well, I also appreciated the reintroduction of Detective Carey and seeing like kind of her
she's a
disrespectful
breath of fresh air. Yeah,
absolutely. But also because also just like Dina Meyer. Her introducing like all this subtext of the two of them, like they obviously have a history, and then when we find out that they used to be partners, and then even when he's going to like the file cabinet and she kind of like takes his arm. And it's not like romantic or anything like that, but it does imply an intimacy to me that makes me wonder if they ever at one point did hook it up or date. Yeah, I think
it was
did
established
too.
that they did. Yeah, because she said to him as much. Like,
well, I mean, we knew they were partners, but she didn't spell it like when we used to wake up in the morning. I mean, it wasn't that spelled out, but but the subtext. I was like, I liked a little bit of mystery around it, and that she obviously does care about him, and maybe that's another reason why she kind of, in that way that like the people who mean the most to you but are kind of like self-destructive, when they have something coming up that might teach them a lesson, that might be a teachable moment for them, or they realize like you're fucked. I think that's why she takes a little bit of there's a little humor, there's a little bit of a smile when she's like revealing the stuff with Michael, his informant, like in the thing. And that was another thing that I appreciated. I had kind of forgotten how well that first kill reintroduced that thing of like, oh, you can't wait, you cannot hesitate, you have to either commit to the thing and mutilate yourself, go against everything in your biology that is telling you not to mutilate yourself, and do it in order to ironically preserve yourself. I thought it captured that really well, and that all felt very Saw. The problem that I have with this movie is when we drift to the monitor where the 8 people are all occupying the room together, and we just go into it, boom, and then all of a sudden the exchanges are less nuanced. They're literally standing up and going like, I was drunk in college for 3 years, man. I know what it is to be drunk. This is not drunk. And then the only door you know how to open is between your legs. Like, I'm just like, oh my God. Like, and even like when Jonas, I think. Yeah. When Jonas steps forward, he's the actor who was from Showgirls, who was teaching Elizabeth Berkley to dance, and then got Penny pregnant and everything like that. Yeah. And but he does she's like, you can dance. I'm like, oh dear God. But also he's a really good actor. I loved him in South Central back in the 90s.
Is this the redhead guy?
No, this is I have no other way to indicate he was the black guy, the nice one.
Oh, okay.
Who was in the room with.
I'm just thinking because like when I think of like Showgirls, I just think of like the gay redhead guy who was like showing them how to dance, or what the routine was.
Oh, him. Okay, yeah. Because I was thinking about the gay dancer who was dark-haired and not a redhead. But okay, but yeah. We're kind of littered throughout that movie. No, the guy who she gives the lap dance to.
The one who's like her quote unquote love interest throughout the
quote
movie.
unquote, yeah. Like, yeah.
Oh my God.
That's him.
I'd rather be talking about that movie right now. To be honest. I did
Maybe
not
one day
realize
after
that was him.
That's him, yeah. As Jonas,
can
the guy
see
who's
it.
kind of like the peacekeeper
Yeah.
in the isolation and stuff. He's a good actor.
He is, because I would like the range. I did not realize that was that. I hate that guy in that movie. I mean, like everyone in
Glenn Plummer.
Showgirls, you kind of love to hate, but
yeah, but no, he's horrible. Like when he's like moving in with Penny to like get, because they're gonna get a discount. Oh, she's gonna work for her father's grocery store because they can get a discount on baby food because he got Penny pregnant and stuff, and he says it like you can see his dreams just melting away, and it's like, well, good, you're an asshole. Yeah. But Glenn Plummer is the actor's name. He's a really, really good actor. And okay, the reason I bring him up is because even when he stands up, he's just kind of like, guys, I think we should concentrate on the tape. We all have a thing that's drawing us all together, and it's not his delivery, it is the line itself. Like, it is so incredibly hack, and just that's where I get the stereotypical. I feel like the complaints that you have about Detective Eric Matthews, I feel even more heavily about Xavier, because for me that is a completely unnuanced character. And I
well, before we you get into that, because there's a few things that
Okay, go for it.
Because I believe when we did the podcast for the first episode, I might have asked, like, would you survive a saw trap? Like, do you think that you would? But now that we're talking about it, there's, like, as we've seen throughout the franchise, there's different varieties of saw traps. Like, there's the one at the beginning, which is it called, like, the Venus flytrap? Is that what kind of the idea was with that? Where you're kind of, you have, like, a timer of, like it's just you. And you get like a minute or 3 minutes or whatever, and you're basically asked to like self-mutilate yourself. Would you prefer, or do you think you would fare better in that scenario, or do you think that you would do better in a scenario where you're working with other people?
100% on my own. Other people just wreck stuff. And I don't just say that as a Virgo, I say that as an introvert. I because you can't control the people who you're going to be in the room with. And actually, I selfishly, and I don't want this to happen, but I'm saying if I had to choose, the way later on you can also go through one where it's just about you and all the people in your life are there and you have to make choices like who's going to live and who's going to die. I'd probably much rather have that one because I feel like that's a muscle I can flex.
Oh God. And then like I'll be there with John Carlos or something.
With John Carlos, and I'll have to like choose one of you. Oh my God! Well, I have to know, like, what did you do? Like, did one of you do? Did you both betray me? And now I have to choose which one is the greater betrayal, or like, because that's usually one of the things. It's like this person has been siphoning money out of your foundation for years, and yet this person's been sleeping with, your wife or something like that. So what you guys do?
I mean, I just berate you weekly.
I mean.
Well, I think that, like, for me, I would probably prefer the scenario with more people because you get more time. And listen, like, just don't make that face. You get more time. And I don't do well when it's like, you have this much time you got to do, because that's where you start acting impulsively. And I don't like impulse. I like to be cool, calm, and collected in like sort of like a problem-solving, strategizing scenario. And there's a lot of things where it's just like you might not be the best person to do a certain thing. So sometimes it's best to just sort of like sit back and let someone else do that thing, and then you can kind of come to the forefront when you're ready to, when you're on deck, when this is your skill set. And the Saw movies, like I always think of escape rooms. Not the escape room movies, but like just the idea of escape rooms. And I haven't done, a whole lot of my time, but I remember back when I worked at the club, we sort of as like a team building thing, we all went to an escape room, which I actually suggested. I thought it would be a fun thing, and we all went, and we did 2 separate groups, thank God. And I just remember being like completely out of my, like I'm already bored of this, like very early on. And I just sort of like sat down, not like the way like Lucy does or whatever, Laura, where it's just like, you know, where she's like, ah! Like I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to sit down because this is just giving me a migraine. And we got to the last room and I'm looking at the timer. It's just like, we got like a minute left. And they're trying to figure out this fucking thing. And I just like got so frustrated. I like stood up. I'm like, after doing nothing the whole time, I'm just like, move. And I'm like, do, doors open. And we literally had 2 seconds left.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I feel like there's certain things where just like, if you might be in a group setting and you might actually be, you know, the Xaviers or whoever who are causing the problems. You think that you're helping. So it's just, I guess it's all about kind of self-awareness and knowing like, what are you good at? Like maybe you could just hang back. Maybe you're just a lazy piece of shit like I was for most of that. But like there might be a moment where like if you have like a good kind of mental headspace, you can do that. And I don't feel that like in a scenario where I'm strapped to a thing and I'm like being told I have to like mutilate myself and I have 30 seconds, I can't get myself to a headspace where I'm concentrating or thinking right. So that's why I would always choose the other people. Okay. As unpredictable as it might be.
Right. No, see, I know enough about myself that I know that I actually kind of thrive in crisis, like life, death, love, hate, like that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know what it is, but all of a sudden there's a weird kind of clarity I feel like I gain about just kind of like barreling forward, but not in a clumsy way, in a way that actually is efficient and tries to get things done. The things that get me are the little annoyances. Those are the things that trip me up, or the things that accumulate over time, and I am much more likely to have things accumulate while I am in a crowd. Like the little idiosyncrasies of the people with me and the way they may try to like maintain control, or they may try to, or not even try, just freak out, you know, and need to be consoled. And now there's time being lost because somebody has to be consoled because they won't stop screaming, you know, like all of that I can just see as like impediments to my progress. Whereas if it's just me and myself, like I just said, like it's going to be like, okay, if I'm going to do it, I better do it like right now, because if I decide to do it, as we see, you know, many examples of in this franchise, if you decide to do it too late, well, now you've just mutilated yourself and you're dying. Like you have to jump in and not fret and just gulp, do it, get it over with, and then you'll be free, and you'll have to live with, you know, some kind of handicap from now on, but you'll have, you know, gotten through it. And I think that's much more agreeable to someone with my psychological makeup, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I also wanted to say of the I guess the first, you know, kill inside the house of like this group, because we know that in the first Saw, James Wan drew a lot of kind of inspirations or homages, I will say, from Argento, because he's always talked about how he loves Argento films. And with the one with like the door and the gun and the peephole, all I could think is like, oh, they're doing opera, but like not well. Have you seen opera?
I mean, yeah, I like opera.
Yeah, we should do that one soon.
100%.
Yeah,
I'd love to do that for the brutality. Yeah. But okay, in terms of that, like, because you can't bring up like that gun thing without bringing up Xavier, and I just want to make an example of one of the first things that started to kind of like chip away at my seemingly consumed hatred of this movie. And I think it's all about associations, because like we meet Xavier, played by Frankie G. I'm not criticizing his performance. I think it's mostly about like the way what the character's basically comprised of, because he feels like a significant downgrade in terms of like the nuance that we had experienced, just in terms of like reaction to your environment and who you have to cooperate with. There was antithesis and animosity and even discovery of like, you know, betrayal between Adam and Dr. Larry in the first movie. And yet for neither one of those characters did I ever lose my, like you touched on it when you talked about being entertained and everything like that. They always maintained my focus, whether I was being entertained or not. And even when they didn't occupy like any sympathy from me, I felt absolutely no sympathy for Xavier at any point in this movie, because he was just like, he wasn't even a bull, because even a bull has some kind of life force to him. That's where he felt like an absolute cardboard cutout, especially juxtaposed. I could see with Detective Eric Matthews that he was also an anger ball, a force of rage, and who would not listen and everything like that. But I could see the struggle within him, at least. I could see the fact that he did believe that he loved his son. I could see how hard it was for him to relinquish control while he was talking to Johnny Jigsaw there. And I thought that those exchanges were fascinating. I actually found, I kept getting the movie back when we would go back to them, and even though it was for like about 3 scenes between the two of them, I think it was largely the same scene where it's just kind of like John saying, "You have to listen to me," and it's like, "God damn it, I am listening to you," like that's basically what it was. But it never lost my interest.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Well, there is one moment that I do like of Xavier, and it's when they're in the basement, and there's the whole thing of like, like there's the 2 syringes. And then Daniel asks, like, well, there's just 2. Who gets them? And then, like, immediately Xavier's like, we'll work that out later. And, like, oh, so basically that means you, and then whoever you decide gets it. Or just you, and then fuck everyone else. So I feel like there was nuance there. But I agree with you mostly. Like, he's a stock character, as most of these people are. And it's just, like, it's just sort of like an archetype for the like to just be this like kind of villainous character for the sake of having one in the movie. And I mean, to his credit, I mean, at least he's providing something. But again, it's like, when you're comparing it to what has, came before that, and, what there still is to come in the rest of the franchise, it does feel like a downgrade. Like, let's just put it this way. Like, I feel like this movie really suffers from the sequelitis of, it's just the first movie you can kind of watch as a standalone thing. I think that, like, there are pieces in there where, it feels like it's moving towards something else, but this one always felt like it feels cheaper to me. Like, there's something about it that I know that the budget was higher, but it doesn't feel it. Like, it just feels like a downgrade in a lot of ways, and a lot of that is the script. And I think, like, again, this is a movie that's come out a year later, so I mean, just think of the turnaround. I mean, like, Saw 1 has to come out, and it has to, like, be this huge hit that, like, picks up, and then they've got 11 months or whatever to be like, okay, we gotta write the script, we gotta we gotta do post-production, we gotta film this, we gotta do everything in post, we gotta get ready for the distribution, the release. So it's like you're not dealing with a lot of time, and this is based off of just like that small window of realizing you have a hit on your hands, now let's quickly make a sequel. Because I mean, like, most of these movies, I can't see them, like, the writers sitting there and being like having it all figured out, in 2005 all the way up to 2010, and knowing what they're going to do for the next 6 years. So a lot of it is like, they probably got a little bit more streamlined as they went along, when they, realized, when there's more movies behind you than in front. But in the case of this one, it definitely feels like it's just sort of, it's just another thing. Like, we're just trying to continue this on right now.
Also, I remember hearing at some point that wasn't the script of all the people who were trapped, wasn't that its own thing independently, and they kind of thought, oh, we could make this a Saw thing, and added all the other stuff around it, and basically just made it a Saw movie? I understand that being part of, like, for this movie.
For this movie?
That
like,
all the stuff with the people in the trap was, like, kind of like its own thing.
Like a spec
It was never
script?
Intended to be. Yeah, like, basically like its own script, and then they were like
the
you know what?
Hellraiser
We could take
sequels?
this, and basically we could take this, wrap Saw around it, and I think that's where Detective Eric Matthews got introduced. Yeah.
Halloween Resurrection. That's actually what this is. This is Halloween Resurrection, but like as a Saw movie.
God,
and they didn't go into the house to film a reality show. They were actually just kidnapped and put in there with nerve gas.
Right. There you go.
You know, but having said that, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt. But having said that, I do much prefer this to Halloween Resurrection.
I think I do too, because for one case in point is, I know you mentioned about stock characters and about Laura with her and everything like that. Yeah. One thing that I did actually get from her that I felt like a bit of a surprise, and I was like, see, that's interesting, was her rage when they discovered who Obi was, and that she, Obi, whatever, when she put it together that like this is the guy who. The last person I saw before I woke up here, and that he kidnapped her and everything. Like there was something about like again, it's thanks to her performance too. All of a sudden there was something to that character. I was like, oh, I wouldn't have expected to get this much rage and this much of a sense of betrayal from this girl who seems to be so kind of like flimsy and sweet and whatever. And now there's this force coming from her, this confrontational energy that I really, really like. And if they could have done something to introduce, like, you know, like what's the other side? Like this is the way the person looks on the face of it, but this is the person. And I think that's another complaint I have with Xavier is that playing into like this trope of like the big muscly meathead guy is behaving the way you would not even expect, but like kind of like the worst case scenario for a big muscly meathead guy to be anticipated to the depths of him scrambling for survival. Everything that he seems to do seems to be coming from a panic for survival, even to his detriment. And that's when I started to wonder. That was another point for me where I was like, okay, is that what this movie, you know, even whatever its origins may be, are they trying to say something? And if they are, what is it? And I felt like what they were trying to do was do in their own way, their own morality tale. And it seems kind of obvious, but what basically, not just toxic masculinity, but just like a need for control and an inability to listen and to be patient and to play by the rules of the game will get you. If you don't listen, if you aren't patient, if you don't cooperate with the people around you, whether you perceive them as your captors, your betrayers, your enemies, or even the people who are just in the trap with you, like you need to be sensitive. You need to move through mindfully. You have to allow for insight to kind of like flood through you, and if you don't, you destroy yourself, you destroy those around you. So I was like, okay, it
doesn't pay off to be hot-headed in any of these scenarios. Can you
which seems obvious.
Can you think of an example, because you're talking about this toxic masculinity, but can you think of an example in a horror movie or any movie where that archetype was a female character?
Oh God! Throw that at me. Probably. Shit. Probably even in this franchise, but not off the top of my head. Like I want to devote some serious thought to that because that's a very, very good question. Yeah. A lot of times, though, I gotta say, particularly, I mean, I don't consider this exactly a slasher franchise, but. It does borrow a lot of tropes from them, but I feel like that was a huge trope that usually was a guy, who's the annoying guy, who's a dick, who mainly exists for us to just kind of go yay when he dies, like the least sympathetic character.
Yeah. One that I am thinking of, and I've only seen this movie once, and it was a very long time ago. Like closer to when it came out, but the religious lady in The Mist.
Oh, I don't even remember that movie. Yeah,
Marcia Gay Harden plays her. They're all locked in the supermarket, and I just remember her. I don't know if she was like as aggressively to the point that Xavier was, but she was kind of like that antagonistic character who was just sort of taking control of what was going on with all the people in there.
Okay, that's yeah, and I'm sure there were a lot more examples. My mind just keeps going to like I think it was Mekhi Phifer in the Dawn of the Dead remake was obviously like consumed by madness and
Yeah, but
basically
like,
there to be a toxic.
but yeah, but I'm thinking like
influence
the
and stuff.
female.
Yeah, women. I don't.
character.
It's
Yeah.
hard. It's a harder reach. I think it's easier to make. I think. I mean, immediately I just think about Blondie Bear in the fucking. He's not Blondie Bear, but you know the blonde guy in the Friday the 13th remake. There were a lot of remakes with those guys, with those people. But I'm trying to think. Yeah, less
Because
inclined, but I'm sure they're
you know,
there.
you're talking about like Friday the 13th. Because usually, if there is like an antagonist who
Shelley.
is a woman, it is like it's like the girl in part 7 with the pearls, who's sort of like the
Right.
the rival to
she's-
Tina, but she's not aggressively, like she's not that.
She
to
doesn't
that
kill
point.
anybody.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, she's not,
like
she's
Bad
not
News
killing
Cruise
anyone, but
trumps
she's
her.
also
Yeah.
she's not coming in there like she's more manipulative. She's not like overtly coming in there and making people do certain things or having a control over
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, she she's not the reason anybody dies like in that movie. The way Bad News Cruise is the reason somebody
Yeah.
dies in that movie.
Yeah.
But so yeah, but I mean, we should just do a pod on that, like beyond the binary. Like, well, who else has been like that character, that toxic character? But
Well, maybe
yeah.
Chris Hargensen, Carrie.
That's not a slasher though. Like, I mean, she's definitely a villain, but I'm
Saw's
fascinated
not
by
a
Chris
slasher.
Hargensen.
Yeah. Oh, Chris Hargensen.
No, I mean, but I mean, it's not that kind of thing. Like, nobody's going to see like a body count in Carrie. So,
Yeah.
or are they? I don't know. Maybe somebody.
Well,
was.
I'm just like seeing Chris Hargensen like on the field, just sort
Yeah.
of like trying to wrangle everyone up. She's just like, she can't make us all do that. Like if we stick
Yeah, right,
together, you know, like she's a little like whinier about it. I mean, like Xavier's kind of whiny too, but like it's just
But
like
I don't
that
find her
same kind of
one-dimensional.
that
I don't
energy.
find her one-dimensional
no,
either. Though.
well, she's not one-dimensional. I'm not saying that this has to be one-dimensional. I'm just saying that
okay.
that kind of like antagonistic character as a woman in
Okay.
horror.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do have to say, like, there's that point where after Abby goes into the thing and melts the needles, and we see Xavier there going, I need the needles, man, come on, give me the needle, whatever. And the music goes all somber when it's finally discovered that he's died, and I don't feel anything. Like, there's no strong inclination toward anything specific in the sense of like either, oh my god, we lost the needles, or oh my god, we've just witnessed a death. Like, there's nothing. Like, I mean, what are we feeling bad about?
Yeah, they already witnessed the death of the guy getting
Of the
shot
first
through
guy.
the door, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird because like everyone's kind of like reacting to it in a way that it's just like, are they upset because oh my god, Abby, he was a fan favorite. Or
He was my favorite character.
Yeah, or like, oh shit, there goes two needles. But it's making me think of House of Wax when the siblings at the end had like that very visceral response to the one guy, Dalton, I think was his name, and they're just like, not Dalton, but they're like her boyfriend, like Paris Hilton, like all them. It's just like, oh my god, they're dead, and then Dalton, yeah. So it's just kind of like that.
He was the deep cut.
Yeah, which is Abby in Saw 2, which I think is hilarious because Abby like literally is just like, he's a non-character. He doesn't
He's
even
the reason
have
they're
his-
there.
He's the reason they're there. But he doesn't actually have any lines that I can remember until Xavier's like, who's Obi? And he's like, Abby.
I'm
me.
Bobby.
Yeah.
I'm Spartacus.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate after that though, when Amanda's having her exchange with Daniel and she's playing dumb, but she's asking him. She's not even asking him. I think he just starts talking about his dad, and he's about to say like, yeah, my dad's a real hard ass, and I see the expression. I just love watching, knowing where this is all going and where it's coming from. Watching Amanda listen to go like, are you going to tell me? Are you going to tell me he's a cop? Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't think so. Everything about what Shawnee Smith is giving is, again, like kind of like the nuance that I was craving, and I feel like it wasn't laced in the original script, and that's why I'm responding to it.
So,
But
okay,
yeah.
well, here's
Yeah.
the thing, and this is
Yeah.
this comes down to, like, I guess the climax of the movie and what her mission here, like if it's to protect him or whatever the case may be, because it feels like this is another one of those movies where it's just like, as most of these Saw movies are, where it's just like there's a lot of coincidences that need to line up exactly as they do for this to kind of go off without a hitch. I mean, I presume that maybe there's, you know, some hiccups here and there in some of Jigsaw's plans where he has to kind of adapt and like, okay, we're going to do this way now because this happened. But I mean, for all of this, like, it seemed like he had this pretty much figured out, but like, how is he going to know that little Daniel is going to muster up this strength to like grab this saw and like slice Xavier's throat at the end and all that, and then there's the logic of like, why would Xavier like cut his own neck skin off before, you know, doing those two? Because it's just like, that to me is like the Scream, like Billy and Stu starting to stab each other before taking care of Cindy.
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 Cindy. But yeah,
I don't smoke.
But Anna Faris. I don't smoke. But no, that's the thing is like we'll jump over this because I want to go back to it because I have a different notion of what the centerpiece of this movie is. It literally is the centerpiece, but and I feel like it's the most climactic thing, even more than the climax, because of all the shit that gets introduced. Like, it's wearing me away, and I stop caring, and I see, even just like, okay, so when Xavier says the line that I opened with, where he's like, "Do not run," kind of epitomizes everything I find wrong with that character, because it's like, you're an idiot. You can't control your way through to the end of this movie. You should know you're a dead man, and I should recognize that you know that, and that all this is coming from desperation instead it's just coming from a wall. But this is the thing. He's screaming, "All I want is the number on the back of your head," to two people who are alone in a room with two corpses who died because of him. And it's just like, you're a completely saturated villain with no brains or skill. So again, you don't interest me. Like, your villainy is boring. Your villainy isn't what I come to horror movies to watch. Your villainy is what I come to horror movies to watch destroyed. And you know what? I wish you could have died bigger earlier, and that maybe there could have been some solace among the group after you perish. Kind of like, okay, now that we've got him out of the way, and then they don't even know that. See, that for me is like, we got the guy out of the way who's holding us down. Now maybe we have a chance. And then for all of their hopes to be drained out because the real villain is Johnny Jigsaw or is Amanda and not this guy, making him kind of like the big bad that needed to be taken down at the climactic moment, gives him far too much power. And I think the reason why I dislike this movie when I remember it is because he dominates not just the situations with these characters, he dominates the movie. Like, the amount of screen time he has and the amount of attention he gets relative to everybody else, there's too much weight given to his character and too much importance, and that's why I don't like the movie.
Like a James Bond movie where like the main villain is like taken out first, and then the henchman is kind of like, I mean, if it's a good henchman, that's great, but if it's just sort of like a middling henchman, and that's sort of like, this is the last hurdle that 007 has to get over in order to, you know, save the day. And it's just like, oh, okay, cool.
And Xavier is no Jaws. He's no Jaws.
No. I was thinking more of like the guy in Tomorrow Never Dies, where after he... we did cover, for anyone interested, we did rank all the James Bond movies on the Cherry Picker After Dark. But I was thinking of the, in Tomorrow Never Dies, the Stamper, the blonde German guy who's sort of like the underling to the Elliot Carver, who's like the big newspaper mogul who is the
Sure.
villain, because he gets taken out, and then it's like, oh, all we have to do is just get out of here. But no, he's here. He has to see the mission through. Like, okay, cool, whatever.
I think my favorite version of that henchman is probably Famke Janssen. Yeah. They should have plucked her out of her Pierce Brosnan 007 movie and dropped her into this instead. But I mean, I liked her in that movie though, so I don't want
Janssen in a Saw movie, that would honestly, like, she would be amazing in anything.
Oh my god, I want it now. Now you said it, I want it to happen.
I want her as like
Famke,
a female Jigsaw.
Ooh, yes. Anything. I will take her in any capacity. She could be the Ripley of her movie. She could be the Jigsaw of her movie. She could be any character, and I will be happy. Just the only way I will be dissatisfied is if I don't get enough of her. Make proper use of her. That's all I want to say. But anyway, so this movie. When he does go for the number on the back of his neck, Xavier. By that point, all I did was lean back, and that's the moment that we're talking about, like equating this moment with the moment with Dr. Larry with the Saw.
Well, that's where the Hello Zep music starts.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually got up and I went to the bathroom at that very moment because I'm just like, I don't think I'm gonna miss anything here.
I understand
like the movie's
completely.
Almost over.
I know, and it's such a letdown because like it thinks it's supposed to be selling you like on this, you know, intense like moment. But the thing is, the man wasn't driven to anything. There was no need for him to do any of it. Whereas the antithesis of that is Dr. Larry. There was an absolute belief in that man. And we even talked about it in that pod. He did not need to do that. He could have tried, you mentioned he could have used the saw instead of the box to try and get, I think it was the keys, like closer to him, but he didn't think about that. So I bought the panic. I bought the state of, I need to save my family. There is nothing at stake for Xavier except for his will to survive, and he's bad at it, so I can't root for it. I'm not interested in it. I'm not even rooting against it. I just don't care. It's cost me too much energy, and I'm tired when we get to it at the end of the movie.
Well, at least
the only
I guess
upside is he's gone.
Yeah, I guess the real kind of like conclusion is when, or I guess twist of just saying like, okay, we're doing the Silence of the Lambs thing, or you know, like it's, or in this case more of like the speed. the repeating, not even that. I'm just trying to think of all like the tropes.
We're in one
Yeah.
venue. We should be in another venue, and we're not.
It's not the same time. It's already happened. But like when Matthews gets down there and the bathroom is dark, and then of course there's Amanda. Was she in the pig thing? I don't remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna ask, like, did the pig face, whatever we want to call it, make an appearance? And like coming out of the tub. That's it. If there was ever to be like a who killed who in the Saw movies, or just like, when was it Amanda? It's like whenever you see the pig, it's Amanda.
The Saw. Yeah, that's what I want to call her now. The
Saw
of Saw. The Saw of Saw.
That, and then her like game over. She gets to close the door this time.
That was pretty cool. I was like, okay, I'm in for another movie. You got me because I like her. But okay, this is the thing. Yeah. For me, the centerpiece of the movie, which is actually at the center, and I feel like it is the real climax, because it's the thing that everybody remembers. It's even the thing that was, I think, in every Saw maze that Universal Horror Nights would do when they would every year, because it's that much to behold, is the scene when Xavier makes the ultimate dick move. And again, he's not even driven to it. It's kind of like his first choice. Somebody needs to get in there. He picks up Amanda and throws her into the pit of syringes and needles. Now, this was another point for me, and this was a big point of like comparison for the movie, and just making the most significantly destructive thing to happen in the movie, at least up until that point, because that takes, I don't know what that takes in a person to do that to another person, but it was his go-to, and then he couldn't get the key into the lock in time. So he moved in on her again. Like, he's like, now I'm going to take it out on you because it's all your fault that this happened. And it's like, with a you fucking bitch, and blames the whole group for holding him back while Amanda is still having syringes picked out of her body because of him.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I'm I wish I like the moment in and of itself. I just wish I remembered it fondly as opposed I mean, how about this? Contextually as opposed to isolated. Like as an isolated moment, I can go high octane. I'm right there because how can you not be watching Shawnee Smith and her reaction, her facial reactions and the noises she's making, and she is like sifting through and even just like reacting, like before she even starts sifting, just the absorbing of the information.
I love when she finally like she just goes for it, like she's she just like yeah, like that is the best part of the movie. I will agree,
and I feel a
there.
kinship to it. Yeah.
I also love the fact that they walk into this room and the camera is I hated the blocking here because it's like the camera is showing everything in the room except for the middle of the room, and then all of a sudden it's like, what's this? And they lift up this sheet, and now we're like looking at this big pit, as if that was not the first thing that anyone would go for when they step foot in that room. Because Xavier's like going over, he's like feeling up the locked door, and it's just like it's it's probably under this very conspicuous sheet in the middle of the room with this big hole in the floor. So that was kind of silly, but
it made me sad that I didn't remember a character like Jonas, who I think is like an actually decent person, and even though I don't like the way he's written, I wish I remembered him, but I completely forgot about him because I always just think about Xavier when I think about this movie.
Remember they did like jump scare when it was the moment just between Amanda and Daniel, and then Jonas is just like turns around and it's like boom.
Yeah,
they're still doing that.
Yeah.
Saw's not a jump scare kind of franchise to me. So it's
no, there is it can be so much more, and I do feel like this franchise is littered throughout with like sequels that I favor definitely over this one. Yeah. But I mean, it was I did feel gratitude to watch it on its own, like I said before, because it did give me a kind of appreciation for what was being attempted in a way that I didn't really see before. Like the symbology of a character like Xavier being kind of like this, there's no other way to put it, like kind of this avatar for the control freakishness, the toxic masculinity, and the bullheadedness, the inability to like function as a human being that we get from Detective Matthews. That's why I got him as a much more nuanced character, not like the most nuanced character in the history of cinema or anything, but or even in this franchise, but at least somebody who I could see some friction, I could see some conflict, I could see, because I mean another example for me was Rig. Who we get to see later on in the franchise too, but the way he's introduced here, all I get are examples of him not listening to Carrie and basically blaming her for like not having a family, and basically if only she had her own kids, she'd understand what this man is going through, and it's like, bitch, have you seen the parenting that he has done? Shut your fucking mouth. So I mean, things like that, I feel like they are laced in there. Are they done to the greatest full realization as they could be? No, but they're there, so they tried. That's what I walked away from.
I mean, I don't like why see the Saw franchise as something that's sort of like written with the perspective of like female characters in mind. Like that's definitely like, it's not an example of like, oh, you're looking for something where it's like I think Amanda is an exception of just someone who's like very interesting and stuff. But like when it comes to like the female characters, I feel like there's a mindfulness of just like we're writing them as like they're kind of suffering at the hands of like this bullshit. But it's definitely like you're not gonna get like your Ripleys in the Saw franchise. Like that's just simply what it is. And this is also a product of like the mid 2000s.
I think Carrie deserved kind of a Ripley redemption at some point. This movie just doesn't give it to her, and also there is no real redemption in these movies. Like this is a much bleaker, as bleak as the Alien franchise can be about us as a society. I think this is a bleaker franchise.
I feel like we're going to be able to talk more about Carrie Dina Meyer in Saw 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of this, it's just sort of like, you're the woman, you know, she's going to have her, it's just like, she's the mindful one, you know, just being like very concerned about, you know, this or that, or just like being logical, and everyone else is just like impulsive and aggressive and all that. But
corrupt is a big one.
Exactly. So just since we usually do this with most of the franchises, and we only have the 2 to go by now, we did talk about Saw X during one of the Cherry Picker After Darks.
Yeah, we did a mini review.
But I'm sure we won't count that here. But like in terms of ranking, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Obvious.
Yeah, 1, 2. And then we'll adjust that as we go along for the movies. Yeah.
Yes,
awesome.
I agree, 100%.
Well, yeah, I think that that is all we can say in this segment. So let's get to the Cherry Picker.
It's not like we killed people. On purpose.
All right, first order of business, we need a cherry on top for...
Who do you want?
I mean, it's Amanda.
Yeah,
I mean, she's just simply the most interesting person. Like, especially given her arc by the end of the movie, it's kind of like, oh, I want more from that character. Like, even when having not seen Saw 1, but this being my introduction to her when she wakes up, it's just like, oh, she knows something. She's got some demons. Having dealt with this before. So I think that it's quite simply Amanda. And Shawnee Smith is amazing. Did you ever watch we might have talked about this on the Saw 1 podcast, but did you ever watch Becker?
You told me. Yeah. I remember she was on that with Ted Danson, right?
Well, she's like he's the grouchy old man. She's sort of like the ditzy office assistant to like his doctor's practice. And she just kind of like, she does not give a shit. Like, she just shows up and like, worst employee ever. And they have really good chemistry, like bounced off of one another. Because of course he's just going to be always cranky with her. But that was my first, I guess, exposure to Shawnee Smith. And I didn't realize that was the same actress. Because this was like back in the like early 2000s or late 90s that Becker was around.
And
but I always watched it and just,
remake.
I always watched reruns of Becker, not knowing anything, but just like, oh my god, I love her. She's the best. And lo and behold, Shawnee Smith, the Saw franchise.
She's got that killer line too, where they ask her like, "How do you know?" And she's just like, "Because I've played before." Zoom, or not zoom, but glide, away from her and everything. I'm like,
amazing,
badass. Okay, awesome.
All right, so last week on the Cherry Picker, we asked you who deserves to die the most in A Nightmare on Elm Street 4. I nominated Elaine Parker. Elaine Andale Parker. You nominated Buddy in Locker Room, who, by the way, we didn't mention this in the podcast, but we did our research, and apparently that actor is the same one who plays the character who is named Richie in Halloween, the original Halloween, 1978. He's the one, I believe, who trips Tommy. It's hard to tell which one it is, but he's the one who runs like forward, like towards the camera, while the two others are running off in the distance, and he runs directly into Michael, and he's like grabs onto him for a second, and he just looks at him and then runs away. So same actor.
He always plays a dick in school. That's
I think he's the
legacy.
He's the producer's son.
Oh, cool.
Because it's Mickey Yablans.
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 Yablans is what I would say.
Yablans.
Yeah, Yablans.
You blonde.
No, you're not.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, so across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, the final vote was 422 for Elaine Parker versus 108 for Buddy in Locker Room.
Thanks for showing up, folks.
Yeah, thank you. Spidey fan says Elaine was a horrible parent in part 3. comes back in 4 and is even worse. She signs her daughter's death away, and the only joy I get is that she may realize that one day, and that's the worst thing Freddy could do to her. Amethyst Frost. Kristen, get the hell away from that house. Andale, drives away. Thanks, Eddie, for not nominating Mr. Johnson, as I was expecting the cherry picker for this movie to be Kristen's mom versus Alice's dad. In that match, I didn't know who to pick because Kristen's mom makes me laugh too much with how much of a terrible mother and person she is, but Alice's dad has a mini arc over his 2 movies where he becomes basically the only supportive Elm Street parent. So I will vote for that random friend in the locker room without reservation.
Nice. Thank you.
JPD. The Elm Street movie series sort of fell off a steep cliff after the success of the 3rd movie, so I stopped watching. Blue Box 87. Elaine, why are you talking like Speedy Gonzalez when your daughter keeps almost dying and then does? Nicholas
Because
Wetzel.
she's saying andale, andale, andale. That's why. Okay, I get it now.
Nicholas
Oh,
Wetzel.
boy.
Elaine, who on earth just casually drugs their child and then reacts like she's overreacting to being drugged, whether Freddy is involved or not? Also, Alice literally had time to wake up her brother, change clothes, and go to the Parker house on foot before Elaine even realized her daughter's entire bedroom was on fire. With that
didn't think
attention to
about that.
detail, I'm surprised she wasn't gone already.
That's hilarious.
That's true. It took them getting to the house,
Yeah.
and we already see the flames in the window,
Yeah.
for Elaine to realize, oh,
She didn't smell anything. She
No.
didn't hear anything. She didn't
No.
feel the heat. Wow. Good for her.
Good point. Thank you, Nicholas. Thomas Baker. My vote goes to Miss Parker. She's the reason Kristen got killed.
Aw.
The Tar Man, Elaine, she absolutely killed her daughter, and there's no way around it. Even Marge didn't drug Nancy to get her to sleep. Elaine had watched 2 killing sprees centered around her daughter take place and still chose to entirely dismiss everything Kristen said, pleaded, and screamed. She should have burned instead.
I wouldn't kill Marge Thompson either, though. Yeah, I love those women.
Jazzy Boo says she seems like the type that one cries for a day, then moves on and goes on vacation 2 days later.
Yes.
Sheem.
In denial.
Sheem. My vote goes to Kristen's mom. Sleep is killing your child and you drug them to make them sleep. Hashtag terrible mother.
Yeah.
Dan's Gaming. I chose Elaine for being awful. Fun fact, the school they filmed at was the same school they filmed for the movie Grease and is also my old high school. Did you know that?
Oh, fun. No. Or if I did, I forgot it.
Well,
Yeah.
you're a Grease 2 aficionado. Yeah.
I don't even know if they filmed at the same Rydell for Grease 2. I have to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dylan Jameson. I never knew that Kristen's mother had a first name, but she definitely deserves to die. She is one of the worst parents in Elm Street and somehow did not realize her daughter's room was on fire at all until after Alice and her brother got there. Like, did she get rid of the smoke alarms in the house? And not gonna lie, was expecting the other option to be Alice's father, as that would have been the hardest one to choose, especially in this movie, as they both suck and deserved to die.
I still stand by him stopping her leaving the house and stuff. He was going through his shit. But he went through it.
And it's the funny thing is, like, all these characters have first names or last names, like, depending on, like, we talked about that with the Friday the 13th movie, and it's usually they usually come from the novelizations. I don't know if there was a novelization to this, but that's where
there was a novelization to everything back in the day. So yeah. Somewhere.
Now they're mindful to, like, give characters full names.
Yeah.
Sean Prinsick. So Elaine, the mother who killed her daughter, or the rando weird guy in the locker. Have to go with Elaine. I know this is going to be blasphemous, but I actually enjoy this one more than any other Nightmare on Elm Street. Objectively, I think 3 is probably the best one in the franchise. For me, Alice was always so much more relatable, the silent recluse that prefers to be in their own head and everyone just ignores them. She prefers to daydream, and her brother is her biggest offender. This was definitely me growing up. The funeral scene always gets to me because I lost my older brother too and had to grow up quite a lot after his passing. That moment where she realizes she had to put aside her daydreams and start taking matters into her own hands is so powerful to me. It was a revelation I had to go through as well. Alice is the final girl that is probably closest to me.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for sharing that, Sean. And sorry that I was saying that with like a silly voice, and then I'm just like, oh shit, we're getting real serious here.
But no, that's substantial. Thank you for sharing 100%. That was great.
A.B. Pari had to go with Elaine. The locker room guy was just a dumb kid, whereas Elaine was a really awful person and a terrible mother that helped cause the death of her daughter. Michael Diamond says has to be Elaine, hands down. Lawley, Pop. Elaine was not only horrible in part 3, but she was the same in part 4. She had a chance to redeem herself, a full movie actually, and she still didn't believe her daughter and ultimately was the reason Kristen died. So for that, Elaine can kick rocks with her and on delay looking ass.
I think she believed her daughter 100%, but I think she was in denial. So there you go. Yeah. That's what I want to say. My 2 cents.
James Morant. Elaine. She got Kristen killed by drugging her, and in part 3, she was more concerned about her date than with Kristen. Grant Dempsey. Elaine has to live with the thought that Kristen was right, and she really did somehow murder her. She probably does take that to her goddamn therapy. That's sufficient punishment. So I'll give my vote to Buddy in Locker Room, and I'm with Sean Prinsick on my last watch through the series. This one was my favorite. Alice is an amazing final girl who I wish would get more love. Her journey, especially in this movie, is great, and I absolutely love the whole sequence that Eddie praised. The movie theater, the Dream Craven Inn, the I'm driving loop, and the Debbie kill. The soul pizza and cockroach transformation are top-tier imagery. I dig the whole visual style of the film. And even though Freddy's a more fun figure in this one, I nonetheless find him scarier here than in Dream Warriors. Pretty happy with my birth year, 1988. The New Blood was my favorite last time I watched through Friday the 13th too. So yeah, death to Buddy in Locker Room.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah. All of it.
Also, when we did the cherry on top last week, we gave it to Debbie, but I think because we're just like, well, what about Robert Englund? And I'm like, we've already given it to him. Apparently, we hadn't.
Okay, we got more time. There is time. I did also just want to address, but just a small interruption while I still remember. There were 2 things that we didn't know that I just want to say. I know now. One was you asked Kristen's dad. I rewatched Dream Warriors like last week. Kristen's dad did divorce her mom. She's talked about the divorce.
I couldn't imagine why.
We didn't know if he passed away or anything like that, and she full on tells Nancy like they got since the divorce. And then the mirror we were talking about, you mentioned that you remembered him crashing out of one in the first movie. He absolutely does. There is a mirror on the back of Nancy's door.
I know. I have it on my computer. I confirmed it while we were. I'm surprised that you forgot that though, but
no, I remembered it, but I couldn't remember. I didn't want to go like, yes, unabashedly, yeah. I was just gonna like, I'll have to look again.
It's like the Sleepaway Camp episode all over again.
Vague memory.
Silent Saturn says, I like to think Kristen ran away from home after 3 and some random stray girl used the opportunity to take her place. Elaine either didn't notice or didn't care and just went along with it. Kind of like a Simpsons Skinner situation. What was his real name?
Seymour Skinner's real name. Yeah. I don't remember because he's always Principal Skinner to me. I love that episode though.
Either way, she's a horrible parent. Also, what was that stupid on-delay moment? What was Kristen supposed to do? Run after her car all the way home? Off with her head already. I watched it back. I guess she had her car. So there's sort of like a wide overhead shot from the top of the house, and you can see Kristen goes into her Jeep, I guess it is, and drives off after her mother. Yeah. But they must be well off that they, the mom and the daughter.
2 houses. Yeah. 2 different houses. Kristen has 2 different bedrooms. It's a completely different bedroom from movie 4 from movie 3. So
well, they moved. They had to.
They can afford to move into like giant palatial Jawbreaker-esque houses.
Maybe Elaine Parker sued the hospital after 3 because of reasons like. Maybe like Kristen got like injured during her nightmare and she blamed the hospital and sued them for millions because they're the negligence that was causing all these other people to die there too.
Or maybe Kristen's dad is like working himself into the ground because like she eviscerated him in the divorce, Elaine did, and so all the money is going to them, and he has to live off of like what meager crumbs he can pull off of the cakes he mails to Elaine.
One more here. Nicktoons says, late to say, but Elaine, she drugged Kristen and basically signed her death warrant. The rando guy in the locker room sucks, but he's just some douche that needs to be smacked and told to piss off.
I think he needs to die.
Well, we already know what you think. Okay. I'm so glad that you've like given me the names of the characters in this movie because I wouldn't have not known otherwise. But thank you, Xavier. For all the reasons that we talked about. I was originally considering Abby because at that point in the movie, like, because I was just watching the movie, like, which one of these sucks the most? And Abby, just for the fact that he's so like, he's just there, and he's like, hey, who's Obi? Oh, Abby, and then that they, he got such fanfare, but we don't have to deal with him very long, and we have to put up with Xavier for the whole damn thing. So for being such an unnuanced hothead who is like this mini boss battle who's been like promoted to main boss battle bullshit, I'm gonna nominate him.
Okay, and you're probably gonna win, but because he's all people remember when they think of this movie. But no, it's okay. No.
Can I nominate the movie itself?
No, you cannot. With graciousness, you put in the rules, so you know. Yeah. But with graciousness, no. I would understand completely if you did win. Mine, I do believe in though. I'm gonna choose Detective Eric Matthews because he, unlike Xavier, had the life of someone he knew and claimed to love in his hands. And Xavier couldn't get his shit together even enough to save his own skin. Detective Eric couldn't get his shit together enough to just watch his son unearthed from this tiny little black box with oxygen, like giving him they're worried about him suffocating, get fresh air into. That's another reason I think like he might have been breathing the gas in with only like a bit of antidote because they're giving him fresh oxygen to try and counterbalance all the shit that he had been breathing in before. Because of all the reasons, all of the sins that he committed were visited upon the head of his son, and the fact that he, even being written more nuanced than Xavier, the fact that he couldn't recognize that and that he had to suffer. Probably, I mean, is it a worse fate? Maybe it isn't because he does live. I don't know. I just think he should have known better. Yeah. He's the one who's supposed to like learn the lesson and he didn't. So fuck him. You could have had a life with your kid. You could have made an amends. All you had to do was listen to your ex-partner, listen to Jigsaw, and just sit in your rage. Know your revenge, if you want any, is going to come later. The justice, quote unquote, is going to come later. But you're also a corrupt fucking cop. Yeah. Who the fuck are you? That makes you worse than Xavier.
You could have just not been a shitty person from the get-go.
Yeah. But you're shitty all around, so you deserve to die. There you go.
Fair. Yeah. Well, there you go. You can vote for Xavier or Detective Matthews, and the polls will be open on my Patreon page. You don't have to be a supporting member. You can go over there, but please do consider supporting. You can also vote on the Instagram account at the Cherry Picker Pod, and you can also vote on YouTube. In the community section, those polls go up once a week. And if you are new to the Cherry Picker, Please subscribe to us here. If you're listening, you can watch us, obviously. But if you're watching, the RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below where you can listen if that's more up to your speed. Edward, where can they find you on social media?
Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Letterboxd. Edward is truth, one word, traditional spelling. How about you, Zach Cherry?
Cool. And you can find me on my main YouTube channel, Zack Cherry, ZackCherry. I am on Instagram at RetroBitchface, all one word. And Twitter is ZackCherry8, Letterboxd, Zack Cherry. I also forgot to say thank you to Jason Voorhees Gallotello, our podcast editor, who's putting all these together every week for us. So thank you very much to Jason. What's going on next week?
Is it the one with the dexterity of the manos, but the mano?
I don't. Isn't that the name of the deity in the craft? Manu.
Nanu. Like Morgan.
Manon. No, it was the Manon.
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 French, yes. Manon. But Monet. But no, this was he's a Monet. Like, you know, it looks really good from a distance, but it looks really fucked up like once you get up close. I just paraphrasing Clueless at this point. No, we're doing Idle Hands. Idle Hands. Yeah. Halloween.
It's a very Halloween-y type movie. It's fun. It's been a few years since I've seen it, so very excited for that. Hope you'll join us for it. But until then, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will be right back.